Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Craig Bollig, Head of Industry for Galleries, Libraries, Archives, and Museums here at Orange Logic, and welcome you to today's session, Building Governance for Growth, how AMNH's dam became an institutional pillar. To kind of set the stage, I want to talk a little bit of background here and share with you as American Museum of Natural History's dam evolved from a single-use solution into a foundational institutional-wide resource, leadership began to recognize its strategic importance. But with this evolution came new challenges. What belongs in the dam? How do we prevent content fragmentation? And how can we ensure asset management aligns with the museum's mission and vision? Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Juan Montez and Tom Bayonne to take us through AMNH's journey in tackling these questions. On today's session, we'll discuss their approach for developing governance guidelines that not only support the rapid growth of digital collections, but also ensure the dam remains a powerful, accessible resource for teams across the organization. So let's get into introductions. Tom, could you kick us off?
Sure, I'm Tom Bayonne. I am the Harold Beschenstein Director of Library and Archives at the Gottesman Library here at the American Museum. Thank you.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Juan Montez. I'm the Vice President and Chief Information Officer here at the American Museum of Natural History.
Excellent. Thank you both. Okay, so one just opening question is I touched on how the dam evolved into an institutional pillar. Want to get your point of view on what was the turning point that made governance a priority?
Well, the library has long acted as a caretaker for the expansive scope of information created and compiled by the museum through its 150-year-plus history. In 2020, thanks to a generous grant from a private foundation, we were able to institute a digital asset management system, something the library had recognized that the library needed in order to continue its work of building the archive of the museum's assets and history. The dam was designed to be scalable, manage all assets, not only in the library, but all around the museum, electronic records, collection surrogates, educational materials, and its purpose was to provide a high level of data stewardship for these media assets and related information representing the collections, digitized, born digital artifact specimens, all aligned with the museum's strategic priorities. That was 5 years ago. The system has grown, and as per our goal, we wanted to expand to other areas of the museum beyond the library. And the interest in putting different departments, different areas, assets into the dams has also grown. And we saw this coming. We were pleased that it was happening, but we also realized that we suddenly would need some rules and regulations for how this could move forward. And we are right in the middle of that process right now.
Yeah, I think that is spot on what Tom is saying. I think also it's curious for me, it's kind of a bottom-up approach as well as a top-down approach that's led us, to the point where we really do need governance and sort of some formal structures. So bottom up, Tom has been working at this for a very, very long time, and I've been working with Tom on this for a number of years already. And what we've tried to do is to create prototypes from the beginning. So things that people could touch and feel and hold in their hands, see with their eyes. And that's led to success, to the bottom-up success. So we have people, in the beginning, there was very little interest, but now we have people knocking on our doors asking us for participation in this project. That's one thing. And then from the top down, we as an institution, we have a new leadership, we have a new president. We went through a strategic planning exercise. And the very, very first sort of guiding principle that planning exercise generated is all about unlocking the rich scientific value within our collection. I think, verbatim, it's to share its benefits more broadly and to open the door to, let me see, I have it down here, to new discoveries. So that is right in line with, with what the dam is all about.
Excellent.
And we were there with the dam when we reached that point. So it was a perfect match, and the timing couldn't have been better.
Very good. Very good. So opening to new discoveries, and the question there was around how do you decide what goes in the dam? Can you share a little bit about the process and understanding decision making there?
Final material. So we don't want drafts. We don't want groups of assets that are going to be edited. In my selfish mind, as the head of the library and archives, we want what goes into the dam to do all the great stuff we want to do right now. We want to protect it. We want to provide access to it, make it discoverable, save it, use it to deliver and share our assets. But thinking very long term, as we do in the archives, we want a place to store the output of the institution so that it can become the nexus for the future archives. So in 100 years, when people are wondering, what was the museum doing to safeguard its digital assets in the early 21st century, they'll be able to check out our assets and tell that story.
The only thing I will add, because that tells you that answers your question, Craig. But from my perspective, as a technology person, when I was contemplating, Tom and I, this is now years ago, we were talking about all of this, and I was very excited because I could see the possibilities in my head even then. But the reason ultimately why I decided to go all in with and help Tom is that I knew that because of his skill set and the skill set that his team had, we would be in a position, like from the very, very first moment that we started working on this project, to know what to include and what not to include. So if you put a bunch of technology people, in that role, they have to rediscover all of that. But, Tom and his team know, what preservation is, what's worthy of it and what is not, how to create a taxonomic layer around the data, the role of metadata and all of this. And then we can worry about the technology and the platform, the scalability, moving things around. And then together, we're in a really good position to answer the core questions that people need answers to along the way.
Got it. Excellent. Now, I know you have a slide, Tom, on kind of the
oh gosh, I forgot all about the slides.
It's okay. No, these are great because I know you have a visual that'd be really cool. I'll let you touch on these, please.
Well, I wanted to mention this is the interior of the reading room of the new Gottesman Research Library here at the museum. It's part of the Gilder Center. This was a building that was constructed during the pandemic. It had started just before, and it opened in the spring of 2023. So this is really the front end, or like the face of the library. And we were fortunate in some ways, just as the construction folks who constructed this magnificent new edifice at the museum, in the museum's campus, were able to work without a lot of people getting in their way during the pandemic. We had a grant to institute the dams, and we were fortunate that it could segue overnight to a fully virtual effort. So the dams initial funding ran from 2020 to 2023. So we were lucky that we were able to get so much work done kind of in the shadows of the pandemic. But I also just wanted to share a snapshot of our new space because it's very dramatic.
Yes. And Karina noted it's gorgeous. I agree. It's beautiful. What a great, I'll put in for Orange Logic to let me rent one of those desks to work at.
Sure, come on in. Now, did I answer?
So,
What was your
yeah,
question?
the next question I want to get to was around content fragmentation across departments. And you had a visual you'd shared about intake of metadata details. Yeah, the aggregate here. So I'm hoping like you can speak to what steps do you all take to prevent that fragmentation?
I think I'm going to let Juan dig deeper into this after me, but I think the key service, taxonomy as a service is something the archives repeatedly note that, we've been working on creating what we call archival authorities, authoritative terms to describe individuals, expeditions, exhibitions, departments, components of exhibitions, individual specimens that are, famous to some degree from the museum's collections. By normalizing this data and applying it across departments, you could have the department that holds the specimen use that same metadata term that is used in the field notebooks that to describe the field notebooks that have been digitized that were made on the expedition where that item was collected. We could have information on the individual who collected it. They would be linked using that same term. And if that item was on exhibit, information about the original or the first or second or third exhibition of that item would also be connected. So there are a lot of silos in most institutions like ours, and metadata is the key to breaking that down. We don't have to break down the storage and put everything together that is related to one another. That would be entirely impractical, but through intellectual, connection of these assets, we can create a better discovery process for folks who come to the museum virtually and want to learn about a certain topic.
Yeah, I 100, you 100% is exactly everything. So I'd leave it there because it's not only it's exactly as Tom describes, but it's also like a building block, right? Because there are so in this ecosystem, that's absolutely right. It's sort of a complete repository, and with all of the layers with all of the services provided on top, it can provide a pretty complete experience. The interesting, further, there are a lot of interesting things about this, but other interesting things to consider are that we're in a museum, so there's an archive, there's technology, but we're in a museum and we have exhibitions, right? And we have a very, very large collection, over 34 million objects. So there's all of this information about the collection, in collections management systems. And so another kind of connecting point that we're conceiving of, we haven't been able to do it yet, but it's on our roadmap, is to connect those systems through APIs. That's where the system you choose matters quite a bit, because you want something that's flexible enough, modern enough to be able to do that without too much of a problem, and to be able to go, say, from a thumbnail of something to a high resolution image, through an API integration. And that just builds upon the narrative that Tom just described.
Yeah, so ultimately, while the metadata intellectually connects all of the topics across the silos of the institution, we've gotten better as an institution about using fewer and fewer systems for discovery. So for instance, many of our scientific departments use the same software as a collection management system. And one of our goals is to get our dams to speak to that system through APIs. So the traditional source of descriptions can be in those scientifically oriented databases that are used by the scientists, but then at the same time allow them to perhaps store their assets in the dams and have the dams provide some asset description so that somebody who's not using the scientific department collection management system for discovery might discover it in another way and in turn discover the scientific department database.
Excellent. Excellent. So the on that, in shifting from just governance to growth, more curious, like people are building a case for this internally, and there's a need for often governance policies. How did the dam align with the policies of AMNH to grow, and gain your support? What did you have to see in that governance approach for dam?
Well, look, our governance, we're still approaching the governance. We have when I said earlier that we were right in the middle of it, we are right in the thick of it at the moment. We're proposing that we have a committee that governs the system and the system's priority and growth and direction. And that would be governed by, I'd like Juan and the library to have seats. So IT, the library, I report to the museum's provost. I hope that they will appoint someone to represent science. Maybe we need another committee member, and we'll have to meet and make these decisions on the project's growth going forward. There are lots of factors to consider. We've developed a kind of application form that folks in the future, if an arm of the education department completes a project and they have these bespoke assets that they've created and they want them to be accessible and they want them to have a long and useful life, they can fill out a brief online form that will inform the committee, who will begin to assess that, and we'll be looking at questions of, is the data in a format that's threatened? Like, is it on a hard drive? Is it on a zip drive? Is it on a floppy disk? Is it required to meet the promises made for a funded project? Are there long-term storage requirements of that funded project? Do they have a desire to? Is the ultimate goal of that project to provide access to the public? Is it to provide access to another scientific group working elsewhere in the world, or a source community somewhere else on the continent? Does it need to be in the system quickly so we can become part of one of our graduate programs? The museum has a master's and a PhD program. We're a fully accredited institution in our state. Do one of the professors need to have some assets in place and online? Or is there an exhibition coming up? And at this point, the museum's public relations unit, we call it communications, when they have new exhibits, they use the dam to deliver all the assets that would have been in a physical press kit not that many years ago. So there are lots of reasons why we would prioritize one project over another. I doubt it'll be easy. It'll be challenging because we have a limited number of people working on this. But as we move on, I think it'll become easier as this proposed committee gets more experience and more folks around the institution begin to realize what's involved with initiating one of these digital transfers of assets into the dams.
Yeah, I think I agree with Tom. I think that it's, you have to look at at the compliance requirements across the institution. As you know, I'm just going to mention one of the things that Tom said, which requirements that affect the collection. So those are key. So those intersect the dam's ecosystem as well. I would also say that from a practical point of view, there's the funding requirement, right? So when you create a governance structure and you align yourself and you align initiatives with strategic initiatives of the institution, then there's a much clearer path to funding and so forth. And I think that's very, very critical. And one of the things that we've worked very, very hard on over the years is to clearly articulate the value proposition to the institution, to AMNH. And that is both in terms of mission, right? The value to what it is we're doing and do for the public good, but also in terms of sustainability and revenue generation. So both of these things. And then I think it becomes easier to, this this is not a trivial project. There are things. There's the expertise that Tom's team brings to bear on it is significant. And, there are things that you have to be very strict about, what goes in, what goes out, as you mentioned, what doesn't go in. But then you also want to create sort of downstream, if you want to picture it that way, a lot of flexibility so that you can have scientific investigations occurring, based on the materials that we have there, so that you can have educational initiatives springing from the dam, design initiatives related to exhibitions, to different kinds of things at the museum, scientific visualizations. These are things that are, smack in the center of what we do.
Excellent. Tom, yes, I was going to ask if you could speak to the content breakdown, because there's some good questions coming in, and I'll dovetail those with this.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot about the next slide. I was so interested in listening to Juan. This is, Juan, maybe do you want to talk about this slide?
Sure. I mean, you can see what's important to there are a couple of things that are important to understand about this, and then I'll people can draw their own conclusions. Is this will change, right? As we bring more scientific departments onto the dam, the proportion of belonging to science will increase. So this will not necessarily look the same at your institution, nor will it be the same at our institution across time. So it'll be interesting to see, and then maybe we can have that in the dam itself, sort of a narrative of how things change. But the other thing I will say is that we do have a real diversity of assets in the dam. Anything from, as Tom was saying, photographs of letters, or pictures of people, things that occurred on an expedition, 2D images of all kinds, through movies, old ones and more recently taken ones, as well as CT scans, right? So stacks of TIFF files that are very, have a very, very high fidelity, represent the complexity of an organism, of a fossil. So it's really a full range of things.
Absolutely. Okay, so a question, kind of two parts. One is, Tom, you had mentioned earlier that, hey, final assets go to the dam. That's where the final assets go. So the question was, well, what about collaboration across teams? Can you speak to that? Where does that happen within the ecosystem?
In terms of collaboration with the dam, we collaborate with
maybe more collaboration around not final assets, work in progress assets, things that haven't yet been marked for finished, approved to the dam.
The library and archives tend not to be involved in, we have our own assets that are in process, but other departments work independently in their silos, if you will, developing and finalizing these assets. There are numerous digitization projects going on. As Juan mentioned, everything from CT scans of different types of specimens to photographic digitization and photographic documentation, born digital documentation of collections. Um, in terms of I mean, all the staff at the institution cooperate with one another and lend our expertise to support other folks' efforts. Um, I think that's part of the question. Juan, good? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, I think the other thing to note though is that I think overall, as the dam gains more and more traction, it makes workflows at AMNH much more efficient. So maybe, like we have no idea when someone takes a picture of, let's say, the facade of AMNH at sunrise or sunset, what they're going to use it for. A press kit, we don't know, but being able to, have a self-service mechanism that allows people to pick those things up quickly without having to go through too many people, without having to go through any people, really, I think makes workflow much more efficient at the museum.
Yeah, I think and workflow is an important thing to note. The library and archive staff attended numerous Henry Stewart conferences when, in a sense, shopping for a dam, and we ultimately ended on the Orange Dam from Orange Logic. And we've had a great experience with working with our colleagues there thus far. Um, one of the kind of unanticipated benefits of the system is the ability to deliver and share assets both internally and externally, which of course enhances collaboration around the institution. The library's archive still plays a big role in that process because not every asset that's added is intended or desired to be public. So there are a lot of private assets that need to be shared in a very pointed, controlled, narrow fashion. And the Orange Dam allows us to do that with finesse.
Great, excellent. There's a question around more architecture of the dam, and the question is more pointed: are the digital assets living in-house, on-prem? Are they in a cloud? Can you speak to that? And then also connecting to the public experience. So curious about architecture.
So I'm going to let Juan talk about the storage component of this, but yes, everything is at this point in the cloud.
Yeah, it's on AWS. It's it can be on Azure as well, or Google, I'm sure, but it's in the cloud. I mean, I think that one of the things that you really need to think about is elasticity. So as we have grown, we've required more CPU, more memory, and so forth, and being able to spin that up easily in the cloud is very valuable. So, we did that knowing that that we wanted to benefit from that kind of capability.
Very good. Yeah, that was another question. It's kind of thinking about scalability, planning for 2 to 3 years. That was a big conversation around where are we going, and how do we make business sense of that? Definitely. Well, we're coming right up on time. So I've got 2 last questions. First one is, what's your one takeaway from the whole governance in planning? What's one lesson that we can share with the teams watching today? And then 2, Tom, where can someone learn more about the AMNH's initiatives and experience?
Go to digitalcollections.amnh.org. And let us know what you think. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is be persistent. The library saw this as a tool that was going to allow us to do our work that we didn't have. Always fun, and not something you can run to the hardware store for in the middle of the night. We lobbied for this for years, and our persistence has paid off. Everyone suddenly realizes that this is something almost everyone in the institution needs. So that's very gratifying and exhausting. But we're happy to get to this point. But I would say other similar institutions, you may not need the exact same software and storage array that we do, but you probably need something in this day to manage your digital assets.
The only thing I would add is you have to generate, to do this with a group of people, a partner like Tom, a great partner like Tom, you have to have trust, and you have to. You can't be, you have to put yourself last and put the effort first and keep your eye on the horizon. And yeah, you have to be persistent as hell, because it's not, every day was not easy.
No.
Right. You know that.
No.
But I think the trust and the camaraderie, the shared goals, the shared mission, I think makes it possible.
And the fact that all of these museum assets are now in one place, well described, organized, and we'll be adding more and more, we can start to think about our next effort to ensure that they are going to be preserved for the long term. And only with a system like this could we get to the point where we could even begin to think about preservation of our digital assets.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. The questions that weren't answered, I'll follow up on directly and share with Tom and Juan as well. Stop by the Orange Logic booth to learn more, and take some time. Check out the digital collections at AMNH. With all that, Tom, Juan, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.